156. edycji WG.net. Cieszymy się, że jest Was aż tyle, coraz więcej, bardzo dobrze. W pierwszej kolejności podziękowania dla naszego kochanego sponsora, którym jest 7N. W tym momencie, Konrad, czy na streamie mamy sponsora, czy nie?
Już patrzę.
Bo odgrażał się, że się dzwoni, że będzie miał dla Was jakiś kolejny konkurs. Nie ma. No trudno. Też jest duży. No to dwa słowa o 7N. No, przynajmniej dwóch z nas tutaj jest jakby związanych z tą organizacją. Jest to znana i lubiana duńska kontraktornia, która już 9. rok wspomaga grupę i jest to wsparcie coraz bardziej wydatne. Dzięki nim spotykamy się znowu w tej cudownej sali. Udało się porozumieć z wydziałem i 7N jakby postawił kropkę nad i, spotykamy się tutaj, a także dzięki naszemu sponsorowi oraz dzięki Patrikowi po spotkaniu idziemy na mały balet.
Jeszcze jedno słowo. Mamy Full HD StreamYarda.
Tak.
Pierwsze spotkanie.
Tak. Więc tak, to jest właśnie następny slajd, więc w ramach rozbudowanego wsparcia sponsorskiego upgrade'ujemy StreamYarda do lepszej rozdzielczości. Od dzisiaj streamujemy w 1080p. Dziękuję. Reszta udogodnień przyjdzie z czasem.
Za pół roku 4K.
Za pół roku 4K, dokładnie. Dzisiaj tak, mamy w planach dwie prezentacje. Pierwsza prezentacja to będzie prezentacja Damiana, który siedzi tutaj. A druga prezentacja, actually the second presentation will be given by our esteemed guest, Patrik, who has kindly visited us at Warsaw. I trust you're enjoying your stay and managed not to kill yourself on an e-scooter like you described. Okay, so the after party. After Patrik's presentation, we have got a place reserved for us, which is waiting. There will be food and open bar on site, within certain limit, but having told him the limit, he was like, "What the fuck?"
It's high, really high.
It's high. Okay, so I'm gonna switch back to Polish. Mam do Was gorącą prośbę, żebyście sobie sfotografowali ten slajd. Jest tam mała ankieta, o której wypełnienie Was bardzo, bardzo, bardzo poprosimy. Link do tej ankiety zostanie udostępniony jeszcze przez automat tak 15 minut przed końcem meetupu na wszystkich socialach, tak na wszelki wypadek. Chcemy po prostu zebrać od Was feedback, co robimy dobrze, co robimy źle, co Wam się podoba, co Wam się nie podoba, co Was motywuje, co Was demotywuje i tak dalej, i tak dalej. Dobra, to w takim razie dziękujemy pokornie za uwagę i zapraszamy Damiana.
Dobra, teraz już jest. No to chyba wszystko, tak? Dobra. Okay, so I will switch to English. Yes? It's okay? Super. Okay, so I will switch to English. So after the technical issues, we are back on track. So sorry for that. So I'm very pleased that I see so many of you that came here today and listen about .NET MAUI. So first, please let me introduce myself. So I'm Damian. I'm honored to be Microsoft MVP. Currently, I'm working as safe system architect in Temat, where on daily basis we are working on our new mobile application for our hearing devices. In the spare time, I'm the leader of Warsaw Xamarin Meetup and also administrator for a group for Polish Xamarin developers on Facebook. In the spare time, I try to blogging, but last time I did a blog post, it was a year ago. So Twitter is doing better for me, actually. But anyway, you came here to listen about .NET MAUI. But first, I would like to take you for a little trip down a memory lane. So I will talk briefly about history of Xamarin Forms. So the first version of Xamarin Forms came out like 8 years ago. It is a long time. And during all these years, the new versions were coming out. And in 2016, Microsoft had acquired Xamarin. And from that time, Xamarin is free for all interested. My first encounter with Xamarin was in 2015 when I was working on Xamarin native application. And from 2017, I have switched to Xamarin Forms. And the last version of Xamarin Forms that came out was Xamarin Forms 5, which came out in the last year. And during all those years, Microsoft and before Xamarin has created many services, tools for developing our mobile applications. Those services are no longer existing. Some of them are parts of the bigger services now. So for example, Xamarin Test Cloud and Xamarin Insights are now part of the App Center. And as I mentioned, Xamarin Forms version 5 was the last version of Xamarin. So you may ask, all right, so how long Xamarin will be supported? And the answer is, it will be supported until May 1st, 2024. So we still have some time to migrate our Xamarin Forms application to .NET MAUI. However, what's worth to mention, the last Android SDK and the last Xcode version supported by Xamarin itself is Android 13 and Xcode 13. So that means it might be that in 2024, we won't be able to publish Xamarin Forms and Xamarin applications to the Google Play and App Store, because Google and Apple will be required using their newest SDKs. So anyway, we will need to migrate to .NET MAUI sooner or later. So .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI stands for .NET Multi-Platform App UI, and currently .NET MAUI is available in .NET 7. This is very fresh news because .NET MAUI for .NET 7 came out like 1 week ago. And about supported platforms, .NET MAUI will be supporting obviously iOS, Android, but also desktop macOS and desktop Windows. There will be also support for Tizen from Samsung. However, this support will be provided by Samsung itself, not the Microsoft. And what the roadmap for .NET MAUI looks like. So this year, we had public availability of .NET MAUI for .NET 6. And like I mentioned, 1 week ago, we received from Microsoft general availability for MAUI in .NET 7. And the next versions of .NET MAUI will be published according to .NET release schedule. So every year with new .NET, we will get new features for .NET MAUI. And what about that you would like to play with .NET MAUI now? So now it's very easy to get play with .NET MAUI. in comparison what it was like a few months ago. Now it's very easy. You just need to open the Visual Studio installer, check the checkbox that you want to have .NET MAUI workloads, and that's it. Visual Studio will install everything for you. And what's worth to mention is that the Rider is currently supporting development with .NET MAUI. All right, and what's new for .NET MAUI in comparison to Xamarin Forms? So first of all, we will have a single project in .NET MAUI. Before that, let's see how this looks like in Xamarin Forms. So in our solution, we have separated projects for every platform. We have separated project for Android, iOS, and for Windows. And this is changing in .NET MAUI, when we will have one project in our solution. And in that project, we will have separated folders for each platform. So for Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows. And why it's important, it will allow us to simplify sharing, for example, images, fonts, app icons, splash screen, nuggets, or the platform-specific code. What's more, .NET MAUI is introducing the new possibility for bootstrapping our application. So .NET MAUI is introducing the application builder, and with that, we can configure our application. Like, for example, we can configure the fonts that we would like to use. We can also subscribe to lifecycle events in our application. In this case, we are subscribing to lifecycle events on the Windows platform. Or we can also use the new IOC container in this builder to register services for specific platforms. What's also new in .NET MAUI is the concept of the handlers. And the handlers are the way to access platform-specific code. And why is this important? In Xamarin Forms, to access platform-specific code, we would need to use the custom renderers. And the issue with custom renderers is that they slow down the Xamarin Forms application startup, because the platform itself is scanning all the assemblies that are being loaded into the application. So handlers are changing this concept by introducing the abstraction layer for every UI control. So in this example, we have the interface for our entry control, and below we have handlers for every platform. And in those specific examples, for example, on iOS and macOS platform, we are creating the native UI text fields controls. So like with Xamarin Forms, .NET MAUI is also using the native controls for every platform. What's more, handlers are also making easier to access platform-specific code. So in this example, from the app XAML CS, we can access the platform-specific code using preprocessor directives. So as we can see in this example, we are changing the background of our... Oh. Okay, so right, yeah, so in this example, we are changing the background of our checkbox control. As you can see, using the preprocessor directives, we are using platform-specific code for Windows or the Android. And let's compare this to Xamarin Forms. To create such example in Xamarin Forms, we would need to create separate custom renderers for every platform in every project. So in this case, in this example, handlers are making it easier to access platform-specific code because we can do this from one place. And regarding the controls, so what kind of controls .NET MAUI will support? So .NET MAUI will obviously support all the controls that are available right now in Xamarin Forms. So we have wide variety of layouts, views, and pages. And .NET MAUI introduced 3 new controls. First of them is Blazor Web View, which will allow you to embed Blazor application in your .NET MAUI application. We get also the border control, finally. So we will be able to create nice-looking borders. And we are getting the new control, which is called graphics view. And graphics view is basically a canvas on which you can draw using the new API in .NET MAUI. What's new from the UI perspective? We are also getting possibility to create shadows for every UI control using a very nice and easy API. So if you are missing shadows in your application, so you can finally do it in a very easy way. Moving next, .NET MAUI also introduced new features for desktop applications. So you can create new windows from your .NET MAUI application. Obviously, it's only for the desktop app development, so for Windows and for macOS. What's more, we also get the menu bar. This is also for the desktop application, so you can create nice menu bar at the top of your applications if you need one. And moving next, .NET MAUI will also support the .NET Hot reload. So in this very basic example, as you can see, I was modifying the C# code, and my changes were already applied to my running application. So very convenient way for developing your applications. And as I mentioned before, 1 week ago, we received .NET MAUI for .NET 7. So what's new in .NET MAUI for .NET 7? First of all, we get the map control, which wasn't previously available, and now we have one. So if you were postponing your migration to .NET MAUI because of lacking of the map control, now you get it. So for example, in our application and in demand, we are using the map control in Xamarin Forms. So this was the blocker for us before doing the migration to .NET MAUI. And now we can start slowly investigating how we can actually switch to .NET MAUI for our application. What's more, for .NET 7, we have new desktop improvements. So as you can see, the .NET MAUI is not only focusing on the mobile platforms, but it's also focusing on the desktop. So we get the new context menu, tooltips, and the gestures for desktop platforms. What's worth to mention is that in every release of .NET MAUI, we are getting better startup times of our application. So in this example, as you can see, the startup times in .NET MAUI are getting lower. Even from version of .NET 6 to .NET 7, it's not that much significant, but the startup times are getting better, and they are even better comparison to Xamarin Forms. What's also getting better in .NET MAUI is the speed of rendering the UI. So Microsoft has this very fun example to measure how fast .NET MAUI renders the UI. So they measure it by displaying the label which has the LOL inside. So they measure how many LOLs per second the application can display. And as you can see, the rendering speed of UI is way better in .NET 7 comparison to Xamarin Forms. So it's very nice to see that this part of .NET MAUI is getting better from version to version. All right, and it's time for a little demo. So I will switch to my development environment, which is right there. However, when the .NET MAUI for .NET 7 came out last week, I was very eager to try it myself. So I installed the new .NET 7. However, my development environment gets broke. So now I can compile my application. So you will have to excuse me that I won't show how the sample application works in practice, but I will show this sample application from the code perspective. So let's start with the MAUI program. So this is the main point of startup in our .NET MAUI applications. As I mentioned, we are getting the new way of bootstrap our application. So we can use the builder. And using the builder, we can configure fonts, as I mentioned, or we can also use the built-in IOC container to register our services. So in this case, I'm registering 2 view models, and I'm registering 1 service for accessing the data from the Główny Inspektorat Środowiska. Sorry for the Polish, but I didn't remember the English name. So this application is fetching data from the weather stations to measure the quality of the air, because air quality in Poland in this time of year is a very hot topic. Okay, so moving next, in our app XAML CS, we can access the handlers. So in this case, I'm accessing the entry handler for our entry control, and I'm adding the new mapping for the background property. And using preprocessor directives, I can access the platform-specific code for Windows or for Android. Very easy, very simple to access platform-specific code from the one place. And as I mentioned, in our solution, we have only 1 project. And in that project, we have the platform-specific folders. So we have the folder for Android, iOS, Mac, or Windows. And as you can see, those folders contains the platform-specific files. Like, for example, for Android, we have the Android manifest. For iOS, we have the info.plist file. And this is also true for macOS or the Windows. Sorry. And what about the code sharing techniques? So everything you put inside those folders will be compiled only for that specific platform. So let's check a very basic example. So I have a page which is displaying the message to the user. So let me check, where is it? Okay, it's here. So in this very basic example, I have 1 button. After clicking on it, it's displaying the message to the user using the display alert method. And I'm getting this message from the getMessage service. So in our share code, this class is marked as a static partial class with static partial method. And in every platform project, I have also the static partial message class, which is displaying the different message for different platforms. So for example, for Android, we have the hello from Android, and for iOS, we have hello from iOS. So this is the very basic example showing how we can share the code among the different platforms. All right, so as I cannot run the example, unfortunately, that's all from the demo. So now I will switch back to the presentation. So if you would like to explore this simple example by yourself, you can access it at my GitHub. So moving next, as I mentioned before, we can also embed the Blazor applications inside the .NET MAUI. And what you need to do is to use the Blazor web view control, and you need to invoke specific methods in your application builder. What's next? As I mentioned, we are getting the new control graphics view, which is basically a canvas, which you can use to draw rectangles, points, colors, shapes, path, and so on. And using the new API which .NET MAUI introduced in the namespace Microsoft MAUI Graphics. And you might ask, okay, but what we can do with this kind of API? So there is an experimental project on GitHub which is using this new MAUI drawing API to actually draw controls on the screen. So we are getting in this project the built-in themes for Cupertino, Fluent, and Material, which are mitigating the Google, Microsoft, and Apple UI themes. There is also dark mode support. And the author of this project is stating that those controls are very high performance, and they are running all the same like the native ones. So how the controls look like? In my opinion, they look very good. They are looking almost the same like the native ones. And keep in mind, these controls all drawn on the canvas. These are not using the native controls. And in this project, we can access very different controls. But keep in mind, this project is marked as experimental. But it's showing very nice how we can do with this new drawing API. And if you would like to play with this project by yourself, all you need to do is to register the new handlers for your UI controls. So instead of using the default handlers, which are using the native controls, your application will be using those drawn controls on the canvas. Moving next to the third-party support. So as I mentioned, .NET MAUI is like very fresh technology because first publicly available version was released this year in the summer. However, already the most common, the best-known companies on the market like Syncfusion, Progress, DevExpress, Grial are already providing their UI controls for .NET MAUI using the mentioned drawing API, which I described just before. So if there will be something missing for you in .NET MAUI itself, you can always use the third-party support. All right, and what's about the architecture? There is something changing for us in comparison to Xamarin Forms? Obviously, no. You will be able still to use your MVVM pattern. So model, view, model. It's still available to use in .NET MAUI. So you will be able to reuse your knowledge, which you already have. All right, but what about support of the frameworks for MVVM? In my opinion, those two frameworks are worth to mention because they are well known in the community. But however, not all of them support .NET MAUI. The framework that is supporting .NET MAUI is the reactive UI. For the Prism library, we are having the experimental support, which is provided on completely separate GitHub repository. And unfortunately, MVVM Cross doesn't support .NET MAUI at this time. And from what I was able to get from the GitHub discussions, there are not yet plans for MVVM Cross to support new technology from Microsoft. Okay, and few words about the migration from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. So first of all, we might ask what kind of XAML will be supported by .NET MAUI. So they will be supported exactly the same XAML as in Xamarin Forms. So everything you already know and like, you will be able to reuse in new technology. What about the nuggets? We'll be able to reuse nuggets, which we are using right now in Xamarin Forms. Yes. Yes, if those nuggets will be targeting the .NET 6 and if they will be using the new namespaces from .NET MAUI. It's worth to mention about Xamarin Community Toolkit, which has been rewritten for .NET MAUI. So we are having the new version of this toolkit, obviously named Community Toolkit MAUI. And what about Xamarin Essentials? So in this case, Xamarin Essentials are being built inside .NET MAUI directly. So there is no need to import a new NuGet. Just we need to use the new namespace from Microsoft MAUI Essentials. Moving next, there is also a tool, .NET Upgrade Assistant. So in this, in theory, this tool should do all the migration for you. This is the console tool, where you point to your folder with Xamarin Forms application, and in theory should do all the migration for you. However, what's worth to mention, this tool is still work in progress. So not everything may work using this tool for migration. I was playing with it a little for the Hello World application, and I was trying to migrate Hello World application from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI, and I have failed to do this using the .NET Upgrade Assistant. What this tool actually did for me was to migrate the namespaces. However, it didn't migrate my platform projects to the single project, which is being used now in .NET MAUI. But anyway, I think it's worth to take a look on this tool and see how it will be extended in the future. What's worth to mention is that the Microsoft has prepared the migration guide on their GitHub, and this guide is very nice in my opinion. It contains the very detailed manual steps that you need to do in order to migrate your application to .NET MAUI. And yeah, like I mentioned, obviously you will need to update your namespaces doing the migration. And what about reusing the behaviors and converters from Xamarin Forms? You will be able to reuse your behaviors and converters, just you will need to update your namespaces to the new ones. This same also applies to, what about the custom renderers from Xamarin Forms? Like I mentioned, we are having the new way to access platform-specific code, which are the handlers. However, you won't need to rewrite your every custom renderer to the handlers. .NET MAUI will be providing the support to use your old handlers. All you need to do is to invoke the add compatibility renderer method, and as the input, provide your custom renderer. All right, and what about the effects? Yeah, you will be able to reuse your effects from Xamarin Forms. You will need to migrate them to the single file using the preprocessor directives to access the platform-specific code, and also invoke the one specific method in your application builder. All right, and what about if you already have application in .NET MAUI for .NET 6? What do you need to do to migrate it to .NET 7? It's very simple. You just need to change the .NET 6 to .NET 7 in your CS project, and basically that's it. All right, and at the end, you may wonder, what should I choose when I'm creating the new project from scratch? Should I use still Xamarin Forms, or should I use the new technology, which is .NET MAUI? And in my opinion, I would choose .NET MAUI because eventually we need to migrate to this technology, because Xamarin Forms, as you remember, will be supporting only Android 13 and Xcode 14. So at some point of time, we will just need to migrate, enable to publish our mobile applications to the stores. What's also worth to mention, I think if you are starting the new project, you will need to think and check if all your requirements for that project are being actually met by .NET MAUI. So like I mentioned, in .NET 6, .NET MAUI didn't have the map control, and now it does. So think about the requirements of your project. And that's it, what I had today for you. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Damian, I have a question about the platforms. Did they drop Linux completely? Because I played with it and it worked, but it consumed a lot of memory. So I was wondering if they will support it or it's dropped.
The short answer is no. They won't support the Linux. Yeah, I was reading the discussion on the MAUI GitHub repository, and unfortunately, there are no plans for supporting .NET MAUI by Microsoft itself. However, there is an experimental repository created by Xavier from Microsoft, who actually ported the MAUI to the Linux, but it's kind of experimental, just proof of concept. So in a way, there are no official plans to support the Linux. Thank you. So are there any other questions? Yes.
What about comparison with React Native? Because like for me, maybe I don't have experience with Xamarin a lot, yeah, but for me, like out of the box, React Native looks like the solution for your project. What do you think, and what do you think are benefits of using React MAUI compared to that?
As you don't have experience in Xamarin, I don't have experience in reactive UI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, it's just for me, like, it seems that it's easier to find, like, it's easier to find JavaScript developers,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
for current projects, and like, I mean, HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript is like, seems like better solution for UIs than writing YAML files. Like, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't have experience in that technology, so it's hard answer for me. But anyway, for me, using the Xamarin Forms or .NET MAUI was kind of natural because I have a .NET background. So at the beginning, with my journey with .NET, I was creating the WPF applications, and I was also creating the Windows Phone applications later. So it was very natural for me to switch to the Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI. But to answer your question, it will be hard for me because I don't have experience in reactive.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Maciek.
So it's been like 10 plus years since the original Silverlight and WPF, and XAML has been the leading language in regards of modeling front-end for desktop clients and mobile clients. And nowadays we're seeing some different paradigms emerge, like Flutter, which favors everything in code in, well, the highly hierarchized way. So what's your feeling? Is XAML still an optimal way to develop this, or should we look for something better? I'm aware of Project Comet. I'm not sure what its state is. I think it's experimental, but I was curious on your input.
Yeah, that's excellent question. So the project Comet is still in the experimental phase. So, all right, so to give you a better context, so the Comet is the experimental project from one of the developers from Microsoft. And Comet is using the MVU pattern, which is for model view update. And it allows you to create your UI from the C# code itself without using the XAML. So it's following the same logic like the Flutter is doing. But to answer your question, Maciek, so for dinosaurs like me and you, XAML is very natural way of developing applications when it comes to Microsoft technologies. But yeah, it's been changing thing on the market. So in Flutter, yeah, we are creating the UI from the code itself. And it's emerging trend, and we can see this trend trying to catch up from the Microsoft side, like creating the Comet project, but it still didn't came out from the experimental phase. So also I think it's a matter also of the personal preferences. So my personal preferences is still to use XAML because this is the thing I know and also like. And also it has benefits as about me. So it's allowed to clearly separate the UI and the logic part. I don't know if this answers your question, but
And I have a question. I'm curious why we have .NET MAUI, and I wonder why Microsoft didn't decide, I don't know, to go and expand possibilities of what is the framework? What is the word? WebAssembly and what's the framework? Blazor, yes. So it's fully multi-platform, and the code is compiled to specific platforms. For example, why another framework?
Yeah, that's also a very excellent question.
Can you repeat for the streaming?
Yes. So the question is why Microsoft created the new framework, which is .NET MAUI, in comparison to using the Blazor technology, which is already cross-platform. So I don't know specific reasons for that, but in my opinion, from my perspective, they did it because there are a lot of Xamarin Forms developers which has already the knowledge and skills to develop mobile applications. And there are also the mobile applications already created in Xamarin Forms. So I think it won't look good if Microsoft drop another technology.
They did for Silverlight, right?
Yeah, they did. So I think, from at least from my perspective, and it's my opinion, they did it, to continue support of Xamarin Forms, so the developers still will be able to develop and their mobile applications.
Okay, if I may add something, I have some experience in React Native, and I would say, I know it's kind of different, right? And some approaches are different, but in my opinion, it's not really competition. I have doubts, and I don't know, I'd rather use that one than mine.
Yeah, I think in using the Xamarin Native, Xamarin Forms, and .NET MAUI has benefits if you already have the .NET background and you are developing mobile application as part of the larger system, which also consists of .NET technologies. So you can have one technology stack for all your systems. And this is the way I was developing the mobile applications with Xamarin. So the mobile application was an addition to our other systems, which were created in .NET. So it was very convenient for us because we could exchange our knowledge in different parts of the systems. So this is the way I see the benefits of using the Xamarin and .NET MAUI. But I also get your argument that it may seem not like a competition for React Native. Okay, are there any other questions?
If my boss comes and tells me to start developing a new desktop app, which technology should I go for, WPF or MAUI, and why?
Windows Forms.
Windows Forms.
Yeah, and that's also the excellent question. So I will start first with gathering the requirements for that desktop project and compare those requirements to what technology can offer for us. So I have a feeling that maybe not everything may be already supported for .NET MAUI for the desktop. So it's really, in my opinion, matter of the specific project. However, the one benefit I see for using the .NET MAUI for desktop is that if we also are going to create the mobile counterpart. So in that case, we using the one code base, one technology, we can have mobile and desktop applications. But in my opinion, it really, really depends on the requirements of the projects. So I don't know if this answered the question, but this is how I see it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that's it from me. Thank you.
What does it say here?
Hi.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it feels like I'm having a stroke because it's only random letters. Hello. I'm going to talk a bit about an open source project I've created together with some friends called Spectre.Console. My name is Patrik Svensson, like it says there. I'm not from Poland, like maybe you have guessed that. I'm actually from Sweden. I live on a small island outside of Stockholm. Not that small, but an island. I have a daughter and a wife. I'm a freelancing programmer, and I'm currently working for a company called Mitigram, which is a startup in the trade finance space. So we're helping banks and companies find each other when they need to sell stuff over the seas to other places where they don't have any bank contacts. Not that exciting, but it's fun stuff. I'm the creator of this Spectre.Console, which I'm going to talk about today. Also the creator of a build orchestration tool called Cake. Don't mention Nuke, okay? No, I'm just kidding. It's a great tool. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a GitHub star. I had to put this in there. Just and this presentation is presentation tool is actually written in Spectre.Console. So everything you see here, you can actually do pretty easily yourself. So before I start talking about what Spectre.Console is, I thought that we should talk a little bit about some terminology and concepts, because there's a lot of interpretations of certain terminology, and depending on who you ask, they will give you a different answer. So I will try to define stuff so we understand each other while we talk. So when I say console, originally back in the 60s, it actually meant a physical device like a screen and a keyboard. But nowadays it's actually synonymous with a terminal. And a terminal originally meant a TTY, which is a teletypewriter. And that was actually like a typewriter attached to a mainframe that printed the output too. So you actually got the output on paper. But nowadays we use terminal to talk about the software that displays text output. Like in this case, you can see the terminal. When I say shell, we're talking about an interface running on top of the terminal, executing commands. For example, PowerShell or CMD or iTerm on Mac or whatever. Then we have the CLI, or the command line interface. That's an application that runs inside shell that accepts text input. So for example, we have a Git, for example, where Git is the executable that gets executed, and commit-m lol is the text that's provided to it. The shell usually splits these up into tokens, arguments that you get passed into the application. So I think we're all on the same page now. So what is Spectre.Console. It's a .NET library that makes it easy to create beautiful console applications. And I mean, look at those colors in the beautiful. It's pretty nice. It targets .NET 7, .NET 6, and Net Standard 2.0. And it's very much inspired by a library called Rich for Python. I write a lot of Python at work, and I was missing Rich so much when I wrote .NET, so I started to build this. But if you have used Rich before, you will recognize a lot of concepts and how stuff work. I borrowed a lot of concepts and architecture from Rich. So this is not something I have invented in any way. It's more or less a glorified port. And what is it not? We get a lot of issues on GitHub where people try to use Spectre.Console for purposes that it's not really designed for. So I thought I would tell a bit what it's not. It's not a terminal UI library, which means that it's not the MAUI, like Damian talked about, for the terminal. It's more like rendering read-only views and pretty graphics inside the terminal. So no clickable buttons or mouse support or stuff like that. And there's no automatic redrawing of stuff. There is... we have support for it in one way, but it's a read-only view. But it's not like you're gonna write something and it automatically gets updated. So it's more like console write line on steroids, so to speak. What problems does it solve except enable you to build beautiful console applications? It makes it easy to display static or semi-static rich content, such as tables, trees, progress bar, formatted text, prompts, charts, and a lot more. And it also makes it easy to parse arguments passed to your application. So you don't have to do it yourself. And it also hides a lot of complexity. And I think that when you think about terminals, you think, oh, it can't be that complex, right? But it can, especially if you want to be cross-platform. So Spectre.Console doesn't use like the Win32 APIs on Windows to do this. We use something called ANSI VT codes. And VT stands for Video Terminal, which was a way, you can think of it as HTML for the terminal, but unlike HTML, it's stateful, so it's more like OpenGL. You set a state, and that's what you will have until you reset the state. So I say, I want bold text, and then all the text is going to be bold. I want red text, all the text is going to be red after that I write after that, until you reset the state. So everything we do when we render, we're rendering some ANSI VT codes. And VT was the original name for it back in the 60s. And each device had their own kind of codes. And the ANSI specification, I think it was ECMA 48, they unified this and standardized it. So you could use the same codes in all terminals and in all devices that supported that. Spectre.Console will also detect the terminal capabilities, such as, does this terminal even support VT or ANSI sequences? If you use the command line on old Windows machine, it's not supported. You will need to use something like Win32 calls to move the cursor or change the text color of things. But if you run Spectre.Console on old system, we will actually fall back and render stuff correctly for you anyway. What color system does the terminal use? How many colors does the terminal support? Is it 3-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, 24-bit colors? Are we even writing to terminal? Maybe we have what's the word? Sorry, forwarded it to a file. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Is Unicode supported in the terminal? Can you display nice emojis and stuff like that, or special characters? That's not part of the ASCII specification. And something that I don't think a lot of people think about is how many cells does a character occupy? Like in Western languages, we usually have one character per cell. But if you have in Asian countries on the emojis, one character or a graphene cluster can actually occupy more than one cell in the terminal. So we need to be aware of how large every cell is, so we don't get like tables that are misaligned or stuff like that. And is the current terminal even suitable to display more complex things? Can we display updating progress bars? In a terminal, sure. But if we're running this in CI, do we really want to try to redraw stuff all the time? Do we want to make live updates in a CI when we run this in a CI system, for example? I don't know if you, like some build systems for JavaScript doesn't handle that very nice. Sometimes you get like 1,000 progress bar in your build output on GitHub Actions or TeamCity. That's because they don't take that into consideration. So there's a lot of complex things that you have to think about, and if you don't care about this, I mean, you will probably get away with it, but on some systems you would probably get a lot of strange output and strange experience, user experience. So I talked a little bit about colors before. We support no color environment variable, which means that if you want to opt out of using colors in your applications, it will support that out of the box. Even if you try to render something as red or green, it will not do that. And like I said before, we support 3, 4, 8, and 24-bit colors. And if the terminal you're running your application under doesn't support the color space that you want to use, like if you specify a 24-bit color and you're running on a 4-bit color system, we will actually downgrade the color and try to find the closest color. So it won't look as nice, but it will look okay. We support different kinds of what's the word? Text formatting, like a bold, metallic, underline, strike through. If your terminal supports it, of course. But if your terminal doesn't support it, it won't render strange stuff. It will just work anyway. And we use this. We have this markup language where you look like a little bit like the BB code. If you were on forums back in the days, it looks pretty much the same. So it's a poor man's HTML, you can say, where you can inject this in your text to have these effects. And the same goes for colors. So you can either use, see if I can the color name, and there we use the what's it called? I always forget that. Say what?
Slash.
No.
You use tags.
Yeah, tags, but the names are standardized in a. So red will always have the same location in this 256 color lookup table, which I can't remember the name of, but and you can of course specify it with RGB or hex colors. And if you put on and another color, you will actually change the background color. So it's a really convenient way of writing colors to the console without the classical console color, foreground color, and then reset the console and stuff like that. So it's
the last one, the mix. So you can say black in the hash DC 14 or is
Yeah.
it personally? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it supports text justification, so you can format your text for left, center, right alignment. It supports tables, so if you have some kind of tabular data that you want to display, you can do that. And everything in Spectre.Console implements something called iRenderable, and that means that everything that's iRenderable, it can actually nest. So you can have tables within tables within tables and stuff like that. So if we have a simple table like this, with 2 columns and two rows, we can expand it. We can add new items, like you see, we have the table there and a panel. We can adjust the alignment for each cell, change colors of borders and the columns. And we can change the alignment of individual rows as well. And we can change the borders. So for example, if you have tabular data that you want to render as Markdown, I think this would be compatible with GitHub and similar. If you have like output from a system that you want to be able to paste into GitHub or something like that, you can use the Markdown border for your tables. So this is just a few of them, but you can create your own borders as well. We also support trees to represent here. This is a difficult word. Hierarchical. And that one also supports nesting iRenderables. So here's a simple tree, which we can use iRenderable. In this case, I used markup widgets. And widgets is the name of the controls, so to speak, in Spectre.Console. And you can collapse them and expand them as you want to. You can add other iRenderables, such as a table as a tree node. In this case, I added a breakdown chart as a node. And you can change the tree line guides as well. So there's pretty cool, I think, and useful. And I showed a little bit about charts. You can have bar charts in your applications and breakdown charts. So pretty useful to display like summaries and stuff like that. And there's so many things in Spectre.Console, so I probably wouldn't have time to show everything, but it contains stuff for I can just read it out loud. Tables, trees, canvas rendering, image rendering, pretty exception rendering, live displays, progress displays, status displays, text prompts, selection prompts, multi-selection prompts, charts, and so on and so on. Oh, and we also added support for layouts, so you can actually create layouts where you divide a layout into different sub-pieces, which is useful. It's what I'm using for this presentation tool, by the way. So, time for a demo. I don't know how much time I have.
30 minutes, give or take.
Okay, so let's. Oh, does this work? Let's open a new terminal. Not my computer. My computer only have a USB-C output, and there wasn't a USB-C cable here.
Some assistance with the keyboard?
Maybe, not right now, but probably in like 5 minutes. I can't find slash or something like that. Actually, before we do have so much time, and I was in a hurry. Actually show you some examples of Spectre.Console. If I can find the first time you run not on this? No?
First time in the console, not the very first time.
So what? Something that's really useful is the progress display, and that's actually building the progress comes later. So you can display progress and at the same time rendering other stuff to the console, like we do. We write a log. So everything you write to the console will be rendered on top of it. And we also have this other concept of status display, which I think is pretty useful as well. And there's a team here, the Star Trek team. Yeah, it's a bit too long, maybe. I don't know. And what else can I show you? Something that's really useful as well, be able to render exceptions a bit nicer than they normally are. So here's a full exception at the top, and you can render compact exceptions, which is a bit more compact. You can set your custom colors, and even async stuff looks kind of readable.
So I have a question. are those early prepared templates for the exceptions?
Sorry.
Are those schemas of the colors of different colors, for example, for the class names or the methods?
Oh, yeah.
Are those pre-prepared?
You can override them.
Okay,
but
there are a couple of examples.
Yeah. So at the top here, for example, here is the default, how it looks by default, if you don't do anything at all. And the second example, it's also the same colors, but the third example, we actually set the exception type name to use this color, and then everything that's not a variable name to be white and this to be red. So you can override it exactly as you want to. I can show you the showcase as well before we go on to the. It was a small detour. Wasn't planning on doing this, but since we have so much time, I was thinking. So here's a small example of stuff you can do that shows the color systems and text alignment and markup text and emojis and tables and trees and charts and exceptions and mention of other stuff that you can do. But maybe we should write some code so you can see how it actually. Sorry.
Explore.
I'm so used to my setup, so.
What if we would like to add some input to this application? Like we have the rendering,
Yeah.
and then we would like to ask the user to interact with it. How we can do that?
You will see that in 30 seconds. But I need everyone to close their eyes for like 2 seconds while I remove all this code. No, I'm just kidding. You can keep your eyes open. But why? Ooh, how do I do a curly brace?
Curly braces.
Ah, there. Okay. After this talk, I can probably work in Poland without ordering a Swedish keyboard.
The Polish layout is actually the US International, so you can work pretty much everywhere.
That's a pretty good reason to use a Polish keyboard. Yes. So
I don't think that anyone can use the proper Polish keyboard. We have actually a layout with Polish characters.
Oh, yeah.
I doubt that anyone.
Yeah, I see that there's a lot of keys missing that I've seen in street signs and similar. Yeah. Yeah, so I actually prepared a little, a small a demonstration. I thought that we were going to write a small terminal. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure. Sorry.
Oh.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So. Oops. Can be a lot of oops, by the way. So I think we're going to write a small terminal application that shows some trivia questions where you get to answer the questions and stuff like that. So I've written this small, this is not part of the actual demo, it's just some library I wrote to demonstrate. But let's get all the categories that we want to display. So we write client.get categories. Like that. No, like that. Oops, no. I can never use the computer before.
Even better.
So we want to provide the user Let's start with start writing, clearing the screen and outputting a nice title. So we use the ANSI console. That's like a starting point. That's a static class. Just for convenience, everything in Spectre.Console is not using the static stuff, but an implementation of ANSI console. But just to make it easier to actually work with it, we have this static class as well. So we can just clear the screen. And we can render iRenderable. In this case, we want to render to write out some figlet text. So now just write no, I found it. Trivia. So if we go to our console again, everyone see? No? We are just clearing the screen and writing trivia with big figlet letters, it's called. A figlet is, can I use the browser? No? Can I?
I'm going to switch it to your profile, okay?
I can use
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, perfect. So figlet is that one. It's just the name for this fancy graffiti-like text that you can use, and we have support for it in Spectre.Console.
Download the crack to the game.
Yeah, exactly. So let's show some categories and let the user select one. So we use something called a prompt. And we use a selection prompt of trivia category. So, actually, first we need to get the categories. We use create a status display. Sorry, like 80% of my brain capacity is just navigating this keyboard right now. So we just await the client.getCategories like that. And then we return the result. And we need to, of course, await this one as well. But what we did here is just we create a status and we say start a string with a status, and which takes a lambda where we return a result. And if we run this, and let's add some delay as well, so you can see it. In case there's a really fast connection here. So it will look like that. So pretty effortless, getting some nice UI for a terminal application. So now we got all the categories. Now we want to ask the user what category they want to select. So using something called a prompt. Category. And we say that we have add the categories as choices to select. Categories. And then it returns the actual category. But we will also need to add, we don't know how to display this because we have this instance of a trivia category. We just say use converter, and then we by the lambda as well. We just say use the name. So that's 4 lines of code, and it looks like this. So now we got this selection list with all the categories. It's actually fetching from an online service, so if we lose internet connection, the demo is over. So we select something, and yeah. And so now we have a category. Now we want to display some questions. Let's create a endless loop. And we just copy the previous one. Have some kind of index, maybe. We get a question in that category. So it's a get question. And we use the category we just received. So now we've got a question, and now we just want to display multi-selection prompts. So we have trivia question, and we add the question dot choices. That's a string. String, we don't need to use a converter for it. Then we can say if the answer is the same as the answer, then we will and has the correct answer. Otherwise, we Incorrect answer. That's, so. And we can set the border color of the panel. Border color red. So if this compiles, we should be able to select a category using Spectre.Console. We have like computer science questions. There. We actually forgot to print out the question. Whoops. So
the question must have been hard because the answers were awful.
Yeah. So we set the title to the question. Oops. Let's do like this as well. Create something called a rule, and it's not a rule like a. It's more like a rule, like a line, in this case. Let me just increase the question number. Oops. Hopefully now so let's select that science computers. One knows which internet company began life as an online bookstore called Cadabra?
Amazon.
Okay, that's right. Hey, which of these names are for the failed keys group? I don't know. Oh, does anyone know this one? Me neither. That's World Wide Web. Like this. Yep. Ooh, Turner operator. Second. Yeah, correct. So this was a very short demo, just showing how easy it is to actually build console applications that doesn't suck. You can do a lot more with the framework, of course, and you can extend it to create your own controls and by extending the iRenderable interface or subclassing from some of the existing ones. Yes?
How would it look on a poor terminal?
A poor terminal?
Yes.
Like
like that one. Although it's not the poorest.
No, actually, this is Windows 11. So there's actually been a lot of upgrades to the terminal.
Dear.
Yeah, dear. Thank you.
Here we are.
Let's see. No, dear. Having a stroke. Patrik. No. It's in the like muscle memory. Demo.
You have a real terminal.
Yeah, but let's. I'm pretty confident it will. Yeah. So this terminal, you probably didn't see it because it went so fast. This terminal doesn't support. It does support Unicode, but it has a local page file set, so it can't actually display Unicode. So it actually fell back onto ASCII progress bar. Sorry, ASCII spinner. I'm not sure if you noticed, but we'll probably see it again if you pay attention now. It's not as fancy, but it still works, and it's still and this terminal actually supports ANSI and VT codes, so it uses the same stuff as the Windows terminal did, but still too rich. Yeah, I don't know. You don't have a Windows 7 installed somewhere?
I'd have to look.
Yeah, but we have a backend that handles that folds back to Win32 and.
Do you have a Windows subsystem for Linux? Can you show how the panels work here?
The panels?
How the panels correct will look like.
Yeah, sure. These characters are part of the original ASCII. What's it called? The character set. So. But if we would have done something like, I can show you an example. Actually, that's if we say that our panel should show a rounded border. Some uses Unicode characters. So on Windows Terminal. I have no idea. 4? That's not even an option. 7? Yay! Yeah, so you can see it actually gives this nice round borders. But if we would use the, see if I can increase the size here a bit. Oh, it's not clear, it's CLS. Pretty sure it wasn't George Orwell. Still not an answer. Anyone else? Okay. So it actually realizes that the current terminal doesn't support Unicode, so it falls back to a safe representation.
A dumb question: how does it work like in resizing the window?
Poorly. No, but in all seriousness, we're not updating anything in the background, so we can't really do anything about it. We're just printing characters to a console. We could, of course, if you use something called a live renderable in Spectre.Console, we could react to the changes and redraw stuff as they are resized. But that wouldn't work if you're like SSHing into a machine and stuff like that. It's all about what information we can actually get from the current terminal.
Yeah, that was actually my question about the remote console. So when you SSH or when you PowerShell remote, do PowerShell remote or SSH?
Yeah.
How this actually works? I mean, how do you detect the terminal?
I mean, the terminal is still the same. It's a terminal that you use.
Okay, so you get, although the application runs on the other side, on the server side,
yeah,
you still get the terminal info.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, it will fall back. It will detect that it's not running in the application is running like detached.
Okay.
So
would it render something or?
Yeah, it will, but it will use some like heuristics.
Okay. And you mentioned cross-platform. So on which platforms does it run?
Everywhere where .NET runs.
Oh, okay, great. and it's just out of curiosity, on the low level, how, do you do a lot of pinvokes there, or rather you rely on the .NET classes in the framework, or you did some, heavy pinvoking?
You mean for writing to the console? Everything is ANSI VT codes. So we actually have our own abstraction layer, which is not in this version we're using, but will in the next version, where we actually have where we don't, because there's a lot of problems with the system console. But in this version, we're actually using system console just to print something to standard out. But in future versions, we're going to use our own terminal abstraction. But it's all VT code, so it shouldn't matter if you're sending it over SSH or PowerShell remote or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah.
If I may ask, what about the performance if somebody decides to print something very complex and at the same time use the console? Will there be a delay or impact?
I mean, yes. It's pretty fast, but of course, if you're gonna draw something super, because it will, when it renders something, it will, like a table which have a lot of columns and super large. It will actually need to traverse the table to calculate the widths of stuff. So the bigger thing, the more nested stuff, of course, is going to take longer and longer, but it's pretty fast. It can, of course, be faster, and we accept pull requests if it's really important for you.
I did ask because sometimes, I mean, the one use I could see would be to render logs or reports, CI/CD reports. And I see that even for the raw consoles, it affects the, I would say, sometimes even the system, when you watch the logs, for example. So I imagine, I mean, in those cases, we render just the text. Now we would be rendering a bit more than text because the components, kind of UI components. So, that's something I'm interested in. Even though it might kill the performance.
Yeah, no, it's I would say it's a trade-off if it's really important to show something. But all the default controls, like the status and progress, they are fast. They shouldn't affect the performance. But if you're drawing a lot of deeply nested objects and with a lot of complex stuff, it's going to take some time, of course, but I wouldn't worry about it, to be honest.
But you are not able to modify the chart with in the console when you set a font on the terminal.
Yeah.
You still use it here. You are not doing any magic tricks to modify it. So the bar is still the same. The resolution of the console is the same as we are typing usually.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no magic. So, yeah.
2 minutes remaining.
Oh, okay. No, I'm any questions?
Actually, what sort of applications do you see with people using the framework? I mean, I can imagine this being used for running some diagnostic software in applications which rely on console environments a lot, like POSIX Kubernetes, for instance. Yeah, benchmarks, stuff like that. What other applications are you seeing?
All kinds of console applications. There's a lot of different people using it for all kind of stuff, but mostly it's CLI applications. They have something and they want to display it in a nice way for the users.
I think I saw somebody on Twitter do 3D rendering in it.
Oh yeah, Morten Ronge. He actually ported an old Amiga demo. And I'm not sure if we have time, but I can post a link later. Should I show it?
Yeah.
See if I can find it. Oh, think it's this username. It's protected tweet. No. Let me check. It's actually pretty cool. Oh, no, of course not. Oh. Probably here somewhere. That's doing a lot with shaders in the Windows terminal. Here it is. You can have this fancy music as well. Old nice, good old days. Don't give me any ideas. Yeah, so I think it's performing. Oh, and we also have the image sharp integration, so you can draw images directly in the console.
Then you get pixelated, right?
Yeah.
Like the portrait.
Very, very, very pixelated.
It's for sensitive content.
Yeah, that's everything. I'll just switch back to my. Did I? Oh, but it's no. And I need to say my thanks. So if you have any questions, just reach out and I will be happy to help you out. Yep, thank you.
So much for